Hey, what's up, everybody? It's the Liberal Loudmouth. So this video may run a little longer, but I urge you to stay until the end because I think it's all going to make sense by the time I get done. There's a lot of things to go over, so please just bear with me. Now, Donald Trump back in 2020 started this whole TikTok ban, and we know TikTok is going to be banned in the United States come January 19th if they can't find a buyer, an American buyer for itself come to that time. Now, despite Donald Trump being the one that started this domino effect of where, Biden ended up signing this to forcibly sell TikTok, even though Donald Trump did that, now he's saying that he's going to be the one to save TikTok. And even people on TikTok apparently don't remember this because they're like, oh, thank goodness Donald Trump is going to save TikTok. But as I've pointed out before, this is a ploy. And I believe Donald Trump did that executive order back in 2020 for the sole purpose of later purchasing TikTok, because authoritarian dictators, the first thing that they do, the first thing they have to do is control the media, control the narrative. And if they can get, another Elon Musk or even Elon Musk to purchase this company, they can change the algorithm so that all you see are the narratives coming from the Republican Party. And I think that is their goal. And I will try and prove to you how ridiculous the claims are that Donald Trump made in this article. Let me go over the article real quick, and it'll make sense by the end of the video, so please just bear with me. Trump signs executive order that will effectively ban use of TikTok in the U.S. In the order, which takes effect in 45 days, any transaction between TikTok's parent company ByteDance and U.S. citizens will be outlawed for national security reasons. When we talk about sanctions against Russian oligarchs and kleptocrats, well, the sanctions are that no American can do business with them, Stuart Baker, the former general counsel at National Security Agency, told NPR last month. Now, that same sanction has been used against TikTok. In the order, the White House says TikTok captures vast swaths of information from its users, including location data and internet search history. TikTok is open about what data it collects, an amount that is on par with what is harvested by apps owned by American tech companies, Google, Facebook, and Apple. Quote, while TikTok is being singled out in this executive order, their data collection and sharing practices are fairly standard in the industry. In fact, many fitness apps were banned from use in the military for tracking location data, but we didn't ban them from all U.S. citizens. Yet the White House says that's what makes TikTok distinct, is that the app's terms of service state that it can share data with its parent company, ByteDance. The possibility that it could hand over data to Chinese authorities has officials on edge as the White House wages an intensifying trade war against China. Quote, this data collection threatens to allow the Chinese Communist Party access to Americans' personal and proprietary information, potentially allowing China to track the locations of federal employees and contractors, build dossiers of personal information for blackmail, and conduct corporate espionage, the executive order reads. While that sounds nefarious and it may come across to most people as, well, that makes sense. Why would we want a foreign company to have access to all of this data and to build profiles against and dossiers against us, et cetera, et cetera? The problem is that companies are doing this already. And there's no push from Donald Trump to fix it. There's no push from Republicans to fix it. There's no push even really from Democrats to fix it, although there is some movement in the Democratic Party to do just that. Currently, your children are actually targets of these dossiers, and you probably don't even realize it. And that's the reason why I know that Donald Trump doesn't give two shits about somebody collecting your data. They're just going after TikTok because they want to be able to control the media, control the narrative, and show only the things to you that they want you to see. Let me explain what I mean about your children having dossiers created on them. Now, this is going to take a little bit of backstory. Years ago, I discovered that my children were being surveilled by the government. Their public school system wouldn't allow me to send my kids to school with their own personal laptops which I monitor. I didn't want a government laptop, a government anything inside of my home. And let me explain to you exactly why I wouldn't want that. So let me just go over this article here with you. A school spying on students via webcam may sound like the sort of thing which has been ripped straight from a Black Mirror episode. However, that was a very real case in the U.S. state of Pennsylvania back in 2010. Seriously, 2,300 students were watched in the privacy of their own homes. Now, the school issued these laptops to them. They tracked both where the kids were constantly, and they were taking pictures of children inside their own homes and transmitting this data back to the school. Each of the laptops had tracking software downloaded to counteract theft of laptops. Oh, I'm sure that's what it was for. The software meant that, unbeknownst to the students, school officials were allegedly able to remotely activate the webcams on the laptops, take photos of the students in their homes, and upload the screenshots from the webcams as well as web browsing and instant messaging. The school took 56,000 images that they know of. I think there may have been some videos as well. They took 56,000 pictures of kids like in their bedrooms, just with their laptops open, laptops that they probably were forced to take. Because in my case, whenever I was talking to school administrators about not taking the Chromebook, because honestly, first of all, I didn't want to be responsible for a government-issued laptop, because if my kids broke a laptop that I own, then I would just replace it and not have to worry about it. But if they broke a laptop that came from the school, now that becomes a whole thing, and it's a big issue, and I just don't want to mess with it. But they said, no, you cannot allow your child to bring their personal laptop here. And they said specifically, because we cannot monitor your kid that way. And I'm like, what do you mean monitor my kid? What are you doing? Like, well, we have this program called Gaggle, and it monitors everything that they write, everything that they upload, all the pictures, this. They go through the list. And I'm like, what the fuck? When did I ever give you permission to do that? Well, when you signed the tech agreement, blah, 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 blah. Now, I gave speech after speech after speech railing against this practice. And what I worked out a deal with the school. I'm like, look, I don't want that fucking government spy device inside of my house, just because I don't want the government inside my home spying on me for any reason whatsoever. Because if you own it, you have software on that allows you to remote into the laptop, just like they did in the Lower Merion School District. And who knows what you're going to use that information for, right? I don't want it. Don't have to have it. So I would have my kids drop their laptops off at the office before they would come home, and then they would do their work from their personal laptops. Then I realized that it doesn't even matter if they're on the school laptop or on the personal laptop at home, because the school is still monitoring everything they do. Keyloggers, pictures, anything that the kid has to update from school, and now they're forced to do these things online, so they're forced to go online to do it. There's no other means of doing it. It's not like back in the day when we would fill out our homework paper and we would turn it in. No, now they do all of this stuff online, and now the school, even from your own personal stuff on your own personal Wi-Fi, they are monitoring you, and that they are the government, and they are monitoring you, despite the Fourth Amendment being very clear that the government can't perform illegal searches and seizures, and the Supreme Court has ruled time and time again that students do not shed their constitutional rights when they walk through the door. Now, it would be one thing if they were using a government-issued laptop at the school, while they were at the school, while they were doing work at the school, makes perfect sense to me. But the moment you walk out of that school, those children should never be surveilled by the government. That is not something that we should find acceptable. Now, I ended up going to the school board over and over and over and over again for 2 years, and they never once brought it up. They refused to allow me to opt out, and it became an issue. Now, I'm going to go ahead and play one of the speeches that I gave to the school board to kind of set up the next segment of this video. Let's take a listen. So I've talked a lot about Gaggle. There's another concern about Gaggle and companies like it that I haven't really talked about much. This story begins with a company called Cambridge Analytica. Probably most of you have heard that name. Maybe some of you know the story about Cambridge Analytica, but there's a lot of details about the story I can't
cover in 5 minutes, but the quick version is this. A bunch of rich people got together, hired a psychologist to come up with a quiz. They posted this quiz on Facebook, and then using some exploitation from Facebook's infrastructure was able to mine data from all of the Facebook users' friends that had taken the quiz. And all in total, it was nearly 100 million people had their data mined by this company. So then they paid psychologists to build profiles and used AI algorithms to build psychological profiles on all of the users. And they targeted trigger words and situations for people who could be manipulated. And they would base that off of these psychological profiles that they created on all of these users to figure out who they could manipulate. And they did it on purpose, and they used this to assist in the Brexit vote, which passed. And they used it to help elect Donald Trump, and he was elected. Now, it's impossible for me to say whether or not they would have been elected or passed without Cambridge Analytica. But this was also around the same time, back in 2015, 2016, that we started seeing this divergence between truth and non-truth, and what was fact and what was fiction, and what was reality and what wasn't reality. Now, Christopher Wiley, who's the whistleblower who blew this story out, he said that they used to use that data and his code that he came up with to create propaganda in other countries. And they were using, the intelligence agencies were using this to help defend democracies in other countries. And then Cambridge Analytica come along and came up with the great idea to use it towards politics. And everything that they tried to do, they did. Now, all of this was done using Facebook data that they scraped from the outside, just based off of an exploit. Can you imagine the psychological profile that these companies would have access to on the population if they had their hands on every written word, sentence, phrase, or thought that our kids have from the moment they go to kindergarten all the way until they graduate and turn 18?
Yeah, and there you go. It's not like a sexy topic, right? Nobody can see, like, in this moment right now, the consequences that we'll see from this kind of stuff where they are taking the data from your children. Literally anything that your kid writes goes to a third-party corporation that you don't know, that you didn't elect. They didn't appoint. They just signed a contract and said, okay, all of your kids' data is going to go to this company's vault, and we pinky promise that we're not going to use it for nefarious shit down the road, and that they're going to decline potentially trillions of dollars in revenue by not sharing that data. I have a hard time believing that any corporation would pass that up. And Gaggle is just one of many corporations. And I've brought this up to my federal senators, my federal congressmen, my state senators, state congressmen, and all of them generally looked at it and said, yeah, I mean, that seems like a problem. J.J. Dossett and Mark Van Kuren both said, yeah, it seems like a problem, but this isn't something that people care about, and it's not going to get me elected. Seriously, this is what I was told. So even though these are serious problems that need to be addressed now before it's too late, and just think about it in this way. If your kids know, and they know, most of them know, if they know that they are being monitored 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year by the government, and they just have to accept it as normal, what kind of adults are we creating? When they become adults, they will be so used to having all of their communication be monitored by the government that when it happens, they just won't care. There'll be no fight in them to push against this. The Fourth Amendment will be a joke. And that's what we're doing to kids. Over 80% of schools use technology like this. They're mining the data of your children, and they're not telling you about it. And even it got worse because after 2 years of lobbying them to change it, they brought in another company called Lightspeed, which is way worse. You see, Gaggle just attaches itself to a Google account and monitors anything that happens on that Google account. Whereas Lightspeed, the school can literally remote into any laptop at any point. It can tell where the laptop is. They can go in, open and close browser tabs. They can shut the laptop off entirely. They can force it to go to specific websites. They can go in there and literally type on the laptop itself. And this is supposed to be a tool for teachers so that teachers can just act like proctors, where they sit at the front of the class. They have monitors where they can see every child's laptop screen and go in there and manipulate these laptop screens, right? Sure, it's a useful tool, but it can also be abused just like it was abused in the Lower Merion School District. And these kinds of things are happening with American companies, and it's being supported by government agencies, including the federal government, because they aren't doing anything about it, and they know about it. Elizabeth Warren and Markey have tried to push against this, except they came at it only from, oh, well, this is a bias against LGBTQ people because it flags words like gay and homo, etc. Now, in the case of Lightspeed, they actually, in their own terms of service, say that they have the right to sell the, quote, de-identified data that your child produces through the things that they upload, through the things that they type. The problem with this, with de-identified data, is that it's been proven that information can be re-identified to nearly a 100% accuracy. In this study titled Estimating the Success of Re-Identifications in Incomplete Datasets Using Generative Models, it says here, using our model, we find that 99.98% of Americans would be correctly re-identified in any dataset using 15 demographic attributes. Now, John Oliver did a really good job in one of the episodes that he has where he talks about data brokers and the ability to purchase this de-identified data and then re-identify people. In fact, there were some men that were like searching out their exes so that they could find them, and they were buying the data from data brokers in order to locate the addresses of their exes. A local reporter was able to actually find a pregnant woman at her home and then knocked on the door, and there she was, and hey, you're pregnant, and how did you know? Nobody else knows. Well, it's because we bought the data. So now the schools are participating in this, where this corporation that I don't trust, because corporations really can't be trusted, they're just feeding this treasure trove of information to these schools. So then that brings us back to Donald Trump. Donald Trump claims that it's this very data that he's concerned with China having, yet in no other case have they fought against the privacy issues that come from these corporations being able to sell your data. And certainly he hasn't talked about any of the children's data that is being mined by corporations as we speak, through things like Lightspeed, where it even specifically says that it will sell your kids' data to data brokers and make money off of that. And these schools are like, oh, okay, well, that's fine. It's de-identified, so that's got to be fine. We trust corporations. And then they have no other thought, and then they lie to the parents. They try to hide this stuff, and now it needs to just come out. So if Donald Trump wants to put his money where his mouth is, then they will go after all of these corporations that are preying on your children, who will no doubt in the future create dossiers on your kids to either market products to them that they don't want, or to manipulate them in the future when they become voters, which we already saw happen in the case of Donald Trump with Facebook and Cambridge Analytica. So again, Donald Trump doesn't care about TikTok. He doesn't care about privacy issues. He wants to take over TikTok. He wants to use that as a propagandist tool. That's why he started this domino effect that we're seeing play out right now. So when he says he's going to save TikTok, what he really means is he's going to make sure that his people buy it so that they can use it to manipulate you. And they aren't going to say a word about how the schools are surveilling your kids, violating yours and your child's Fourth Amendment rights, and how the government now has spy devices inside of nearly every home in the United States of America. This is a tragedy that's unfolding before our very eyes, and nobody is even talking about it. Anyway, please let me know what you think in the comment section. Am I just crazy tinfoil hat conspiracy, or do the facts speak for themselves? Let me know. This is the Liberal Loudmouth, and we'll catch you in the next video. Peace.